Before her son escaped from a home in southern Utah, Ruby Franke and her family lived here in this Springville, Utah affluent neighborhood in the north central part of the state. Now with a taped up front door, this is the family home where the Frankes once lived.
On the 30th of August, a severely underweight 12-year-old boy appears at a stranger's home asking for food and water. This marked the beginning of this heartbreaking child abuse case. This was the point where everything unraveled, and a case involving years of abuse that had previously gone unpunished got the attention it deserved. Welcome back to the Ruby Franke case. Join us as we highlight all the updates on this ongoing case. As many of you already know, Ruby Franke was a Mormon mum who had achieved great success by attracting well over 2 million subscribers to her now deleted YouTube channel titled 8 Passengers. Ruby's parenting style became her personal brand, and many at the time described it as tough love. The channel eventually disappeared. Years later, someone made this 911 call.
911, the address of your emergency. Okay, and the phone number you're calling from. Tell me exactly what's happened.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty.
Okay. Is your door locked?
No, I'm sitting outside with him on the front patio. His ankles are taped up, and he won't tell us why.
Okay.
But he has duct taped around each ankle. Yeah, there's sores around them. I think there's a good chance he's been... Oh, and he has them around his ankles. I mean, his wrists as well. Okay, this boy has been... He needs... This kid has obviously been... I think he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds.
Okay. Let's get the paramedics headed over that way, okay?
Oh, that's a good idea, too.
The boy claims to have escaped from the home of Jodi Hildenbrandt, his mother's friend and business partner. Jodi was a marriage counselor who also provided sex addiction treatment through her work with the Lifestyle Counseling Network. She partnered with Ruby Franke to launch a life coaching company called Connections. Ruby's son, 12, and 10-year-old daughter were taken to the hospital immediately after the police found them. Other items found in the home were ropes, handcuffs, and duct tape. All laptops, tablets, and phones found by the police were taken in as well. An investigation began in full swing. 6 counts of felony child abuse were brought against Jodi Hildenbrandt and Ruby Franke at their arrest. This has been a widely covered case so far because everyone is very interested in its outcome. Fueling this interest seems to be that new evidence seemingly pops up every other day. By evidence, we mean testimonies from people who knew the defendants prior to the arrests. Ruby Franke had dealt with a lot of criticism on her parenting back in the day while the 8 Passenger channel was still active. So it is natural that her partner, Jodi Hildenbrandt, is bearing the brunt of the criticism now. A lot of people who know Jodi have been voicing concerns for years, but it never really got the attention that it should have until now. These people who have been victims of her teachings and practices are now coming forward again and ultimately helping to build a solid case against her. One such person is Jessie Hildenbrandt, who prefers the pronouns they/them.
We knew 14, almost 15 years ago that she's already done this to me.
After enduring what they refer to as brutal abuse at the hands of their Aunt Jodi, Jessie has spent years trying to find their voice again. The harsh treatment Jessie endured greatly mirrors all that the younger Franke children seemingly endured in that house of horrors.
This room and write out my sins on a paper. She would come back in and read these sins back to me and have me kneel on the floor on my hands and knees and beg for forgiveness.
According to Jessie, there are documented police reports that confirm their story of abuse. Apparently, Jessie eventually made it to the American Fork police station in March 2010 and reported a case against Jodi. Although their Aunt Jodi did not face any real consequences, they were glad they made that report.
And I understand why the public is focusing on Ruby. It's Ruby's children. But all of these theories and these modalities and these parenting ideas, that all comes from Jodi.
Testimonies like this against Jodi Hildenbrandt that highlight her history of abuse tend to take away a lot of the blame from Ruby Franke, but the fact remains that Ruby already had a history of terrible parenting, taking away food and withdrawing necessities like beds from the kids. These were things that Ruby did to her kids long before meeting Jodi Hildebrandt, and she documented these things on her YouTube channel. Her parenting style was so problematic that a Change.org petition asking CPS to check on the kids garnered hundreds of signatures back in 2020. The records prove that police visited the Franke home more than a dozen times in recent years for numerous reports of juvenile issues in 2018 and 2019. There were also numerous welfare checks in 2022. Forward to 2023, and Ruby Franke is charged with 6 counts of child abuse. Now, the Oversight Committee for Utah's child welfare system is currently looking into CPS's handling of the case. So it is interesting that a growing number of people are blaming Jodi Hildebrandt for all of it. While there may be some truth here, Ruby should not be exonerated for her crimes against her own children. Neither of the defendants has taken a plea, and both are still being held without bail. But what else is new? Turns out that while the Franke family were being harassed by angry followers, in quote, Ruby and her husband, Kevin Franke, sought the help of a private investigator. That investigator was David Corrington, a retired special agent with the Department of Homeland Security. Corrington recently sat for an interview with Jesse Weber of the Law and Crime Network. During this interview, he opened up about his time working for the Frankes back in 2020.
In the public sector now, but you were hired as a private investigator for the Frankes a few years ago. How did you first get linked up with them?
So actually, I was referred to them by, I had done several other stalking threat type cases through several other platforms or individuals that were influencers or high profile YouTubers that had also received several threats and those type of things. So that I had never met nor known them before. So this was the first time when they called me that I had spoke to them and learned of their situation.
So you didn't know anything about their YouTube channel or anything like that?
Never heard of 8 Passengers before they called me, so.
When asked about his thoughts on the Franke couple when he first met them, Corrington admitted that most of his interaction was with Kevin Franke. He explained how he only got to speak to Ruby once. He believed that Kevin was genuinely concerned for his family and had no reason to believe otherwise.
Your impression of Kevin when you first met him?
Seemed like, genuinely nice guy. I felt like he was genuinely concerned for, for the safety of his family, which clearly he was willing to pay money. He was frustrated with law enforcement, didn't feel like they were doing enough to take it seriously, which is why he reached out to me to see if I could help.
All of these impressions were gotten from telephone conversations. Corrington believed that Kevin did not want him to meet the kids or come over to their home for safety reasons.
Kids, did you have an opportunity to meet them, to talk to them at all?
No, I actually had tried to set up a meeting inside the home, and Kevin said he didn't want to do that. So we just kept everything over the phone.
Did he say why he didn't want you to come to the home?
No, he didn't.
Let's talk about some of these
Corrington also admitted that looking back at how things played out, he did feel odd about Kevin's preference to only speak over the phone. Corrington usually met his clients in person at least once, but he also understood the need to follow the lead of his client. So rather than force a physical meeting, he respected the possibility that Kevin might just be a private person who did not want to draw more attention to the situation at hand. When asked why he barely made contact with Ruby Franke, Corrington responded that it was not an uncommon situation. He had dealt with similar situations where one spouse just let the other take the lead, so he did not think anything of it at the time.
Did you think it was strange that your contact was only with Kevin and not with Ruby?
At the time, it's not uncommon to just have one spouse take the role and dealing with a particular case. So I didn't think it was too, I didn't think it was too strange. I can legitimately.
Then Corrington was asked how possible it was that Kevin Franke was oblivious to the abuse his kids were subjected to while he was separated from Ruby. Remember that Kevin Franke's attorney had spoken on the abuse and claimed that Kevin hadn't even been in the home because Ruby had insisted that he shouldn't see the children During that time, Kevin had been away from his family for about 13 months, with no phone calls or meeting up with the children. Corrington did not say much, but he did acknowledge the fact that Kevin had not yet been charged with any crimes because he was nowhere near the Hildenbrandt home. He explained that it was a very peculiar situation because he was almost unlikely to be unaware. He also believes this unlikelihood is why a lot of people keep calling for Kevin Franke to join Ruby and Jodi in the child abuse charges. Just like everyone else, David Corrington hopes that justice will be served to the fullest extent of the law.
He was separated for this amount of time. There was an issue in the family, and yet he didn't know what was happening to his kids for this amount of time. That's the part that just, I think, rubs some people the wrong way.
And I understand that. I mean, he was very involved in the children's lives. So it would be hard for me to understand as well, that he wasn't aware of some of the issues that might have been going on there. And of course,
as for Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildenbrandt, we already know what the full weight of the law would mean for them. Each single count of severe child abuse carries a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison. If the prosecution can prove beyond reasonable doubt that multiple cases of child abuse actually did happen, then that sentence will soar much higher than that. Ruby's 2 youngest children are currently in the care of the state, but their father, Kevin, is working to get them back. His hopes and goal are to persuade the state that he is a good father and that the children would be much safer with him than in the state's custody. But some reports began circulating in the media, which suddenly made Kevin's heartwarming idea look wrong. It all began with this video.
There you go. Is it all there?
Yes. Yeah, explain to me again why this was not robbery.
Because it's a civil issue. You guys are family. She's been in the house before. You haven't been in the house in a year. She had interest in the items. She didn't take them with the intention to deprive you of them. So that's the theft code. We have to prove intent to deprive you of the items. And that wasn't her intent in having them. So the detective sergeant said that we're not going to charge her for anything.
Okay. I'll have to do some more research on that.
You're welcome to do that. If you want to follow up with her, text yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll be here on Tuesday. His name's Sergeant McCoy. Okay. You're welcome. Take care.
It was obtained from the Springville Police Department. This video was taken a couple of days after Ruby's arrest, and it shows Kevin picking up some items at the police department. Apparently, Kevin Franke wanted his oldest daughter, Shari, to be charged with burglary because she entered the family home and took some items. When the police did not grant this request for good reason, Kevin then threatened to sue the police. Wondering what's going on? Wondering why a man who was seeking custody of his younger children was trying to get his oldest arrested? We will start at the beginning. Shari Franke was apparently granted temporary custody of her younger siblings, and she needed to retrieve some of the things that they would need from the family home. So she entered the family home in Springville, and while collecting personal items for 2 of the kids, she grabbed some things that belonged to Kevin. Kevin was clearly not at home at the time, so when he returned, he noticed the door had been kicked in, but Shari had not done that. The door was kicked by the police a day before because they had a warrant to enter the home. Unfortunately, he noticed his items were missing and immediately contacted the police. He complained that it was clearly a burglary incident, but the police explained that they had been responsible for kicking the door down the day prior to Shari entering the house.
Kevin Franke called Springville police, that is Ruby's husband, to report a burglary at that home. He said the front door had been kicked in and electronic items had been taken. The department said, no, the front door wasn't a burglarized incident. That was us serving your search warrant 2 days prior.
They also explained that a burglary should be ruled out because Shari had a genuine reason to be in the house. She entered the house to collect things for the other kids, since she has temporary custody of them. They explained all of this to Kevin, but he apparently refused to see reasons for the situation. He made a fuss about the missing items. Turns out the missing items included his cell phone, tablet, passports, and some journals. At this point, these items that Shari took do make you wonder, could Shari have been trying to keep Kevin from getting away by taking his passport? Even the journals and phones? Was she trying to gather more evidence against her parents? Anyway, Kevin insisted on knowing why Shari would not be charged for theft. Again, the officers explained that his daughter did not mean to deprive him of those items. Eventually, Shari returned Kevin's items to the police station, and Kevin was called in to pick them up. And this was when that video was taken. It just leaves a bitter taste in your mouth, doesn't it? Since the release of that video, nobody has been a fan of Kevin Franke. It doesn't make any sense that he tried to get Shari arrested. Why was he acting out? Was there something he did not want her to see on those devices? Well, your guess is as good as ours. Kevin's attorney, Randy Kester, had initially come to his defense again. He shared a statement regarding the situation, saying Kevin didn't do either. He and Shari are working together on bygones and resuming a loving and healthy father-daughter relationship. Kevin is still trying to understand and correct the upside-down world that was dealt to him. It's a lot to deal with at once.
Convinced the state that he's an incredible father, as he was before all this happened, and they became separated, but in the meantime he's just working hard on getting himself back in position to be able to take these kids and raise them as a good father would.
But now that this video is out there, Kevin can't deny this exchange with the police anymore. But this shocking development has an even more shocking backstory. Not a lot of people are aware of this, but the two middle children of the Franke family were missing for a considerable amount of time. On the day of Jodi and Ruby's arrests, the two outstanding Franke children were later found in Pam Botcher's care in American Fork. This event was after the police took a search warrant to the Franke home in Springville. They broke down the front door of the home when they did not get an answer at the door. Now Pam Botcher is the president of Connections and a longtime friend of Jodi Hildenbrandt. She told police that Ruby called her around noon that day. Ruby had given the excuse of a family emergency and asked Pam if she could leave her two children to stay with her for a while. There is a lot to unpack here, so we will go back to the beginning. Jodi and Ruby were arrested for child abuse on August 30th, 2023. Reports obtained by KUTV2 News show how local law enforcement collaborated with the Department of Children and Family Services to locate two of Ruby Franke's children. Two had been found in Jodi Hildenbrandt's home, but two were yet to be found. The report outlined how the police had searched Ruby Franke's Springville home after receiving a warrant.
They were looking with DCFS for two of Ruby Franke's children on the day of her arrest, so the end of August. They ended up searching Ruby Franke's home in Springville after they received a warrant. They didn't find the children there. They did talk to a couple other family members, and they determined after looking at surveillance video from one of the child's place of employment that they were picked up by a woman named Pam Botcher. That is the third member of Connections class.
After several minutes were spent knocking and announcing their presence, the police officers made their way to Franke's home. They breached the front door. This meant they had left the front door significantly damaged after entering the home. Of course, they didn't find the children there, so they spoke to a couple of other family members but got no leads on the whereabouts of the kids. Then they turned to the surveillance cameras. After pulling the videos, they were led in the direction of Pam Botcher. They followed up on this and found the two children at Pam's house in American Fork. Pam had explained that the kids were with her at Ruby's request. Pam Botcher also established the fact that it was not the first time they had been left in her care. DCFS then gave the kids the option of either going to a foster family or staying with their oldest sister, Shari. Apparently the kids had not wanted to leave Pam Botcher's home. It took a while before they agreed to be with Shari. These were the events that led to Shari, a DCFS caseworker, and some other family members going into the home to gather personal items for the children.
Reports I obtained from the Springville Police Department pertaining to Ruby Franke. The day after her arrest, we know that her oldest daughter and a DCFS caseworker along with other family members went in the home to gather personal items for 4 children.
We know that Shari stayed in northern Utah and was a full-time college student. Her current status is yet to be determined because it's possible that she might want to take some time off to be able to take care of her family problems. The fact that Shari has temporary custody of 2 of her siblings says so much. We mean their father was not even an option when caregivers for the children were being deliberated. We expect to see more truths come to light in the coming days, and we hope that justice will be served in the end.